How's it going, everybody? This is Dailies to Downloads. My name is Chad. With me is Eric, both of us wearing shades of yellow this week. And as WrestleMania season is upon us, and as you watch this, it'll be right in the middle of it if you're watching it the day it's released. We decided we would talk about wrestlers in movies. So today we are going to talk about the best movies starring pro wrestlers. And before we get to our picks, Eric, it's to me, it's cool to see that the way wrestlers are put in movies and the fact that more of them are being hired, not just for starring roles, but for minor roles, to me is a good thing. And I like to see it. You know, you have people like Kevin Nash who has found side projects, I guess, where he can do these like little small roles and, make a few dollars. So it's cool to see that Hollywood is actually considering them for roles because let's face it, they are entertainers. So it's not like it's a far stretch a lot of the times. Because once upon a time, as we were talking right before this, it was no holds barred and Suburban Commando, and that was about it. It was just whatever Hogan decided to do. And like the idea of wrestlers breaking into movies, and obviously Rowdy Piper to a degree, was really not something that happened a lot. They kind of had their own niche of movies that would even consider them, right?
Yeah, and I guess it also depends. I don't know how much of this is like being typecast versus like how much of it is the pro wrestler's choice. But like in those films you mentioned, even going further back to Rocky 3, right, where Hogan
Right.
shows up, right? Like it was always like you are going to play a version of yourself and you're going
Yeah.
to be a brute wrestler or whatever. So if you weren't playing a professional wrestler, you were playing an action hero
Right.
or like yeah, I mean, or it's just supposed to be like the comedy comes from him being out of like a fish out of water, and
Right. Well, yeah, that
new
happened a
guy.
lot.
Yeah, so you'll get wrestlers with little kids as like a nanny a lot. That's been recycled over and over again.
Mr.
Uh,
Nanny, the Tooth Fairy, absolutely.
yeah, and that's like the laughs are Schwarzenegger. For his credit, he too came from a world of bodybuilding and athletics, but we don't think of him like that anymore. But he kind of, and I think that's what's been interesting maybe in the last 10, 15 years, I guess, to like see wrestlers perhaps be offered different kinds of roles or maybe be open to taking them more. Like if you mentioned Kevin Nash, like the fact that he's working with Soderbergh in like Magic Mike 2
Right.
was a lot better than his appearance in the other sequel, Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 is the Super
Secret of
Shredder.
the Ooze, Super Shredder.
Can't even say it. I can't even say it. Yeah, so it is nice to kind of see, and like we talked about last time, The Rock, Southland Tales, like a lot of you wouldn't associate wrestlers typically with that. So it is nice to not feel that they're confined to just playing that specific type.
Yeah, and I think that like somebody like The Rock, obviously anybody in the wrestling industry who tries to go into acting certainly owes him a debt of gratitude. And by extension, Hogan, as he was the one that paved the way to a certain degree. But The Rock, at this point, I mean, obviously we know how successful he was in wrestling, but I mean, I think people just mainly look at him as an actor now.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And
that's
they tried to like shoehorn him. Remember the Scorpion King? Oh, it was the Mummy Returns
right. Yeah.
and the Scorpion King and the Rundown. Like they were also trying to shoehorn him into that wrestler movie thing. But thanks
Well,
to his
yeah.
charisma and credit, he broke out from that, right? And now
Yeah,
it's
and there were a couple movies early on. I feel like it was The Rundown, although The Rundown was a solid little flick in its own right. But like, there was a few movies where he would even do his moves and like you would see the eyebrow and like and
yeah.
stuff like that. But
Walking
he like,
Tall. Did
yeah,
they do a remake?
what's that?
Walking Tall. Did
Yeah,
you? Yeah. Yeah.
and like you don't see he doesn't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
So he has broken out of that, but I think it's cool to see them get new roles, but a lot of times they will be supporting roles or part of an ensemble in some way. And so our criteria here, I specified starring roles, and obviously that kind of narrows down the field of titles to choose from. What I tried to stay with is either a starring role or if they are part of an ensemble, it has to be like the main part of the ensemble. So like somebody conceivably, like if Eric had come out and said, "Hey, I picked the Princess Bride," I would let that slide simply because Andre has a very prominent role in that movie, and it's a very good movie. And as people hear our picks, they're going to think maybe we're crazy, but
Yeah. But that is one of the most famous examples that people would associate a wrestler with a movie.
absolutely. And I also tried, and I didn't say this to you, Eric, but I tried to stay with movies that were when they were actively wrestling or still had their foot in the business to a certain degree. So, like, if I was really listing probably the best movie starring a wrestler, I might I might pick something like Moana, because that that is a terrific movie that I've seen many times, but he was pretty much out of there by then.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I didn't pick that.
And
But
I guess we're also one. I think they're still around the proliferation of WWE films. They're like, are they still around? Are they still doing
I
things?
think they still have that division, but
Okay.
you don't see that logo anymore. Really, I mean, there for a while there, they even started to do movies without their talent. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Which
but
were actually, I supposedly, like the best ones in a
right,
way. The
and I mean,
Call.
they do
And,
still do a Marine movie every now and then. If
oh,
when the Miz needs an extra paycheck, they have him star in a new Marine movie, and they throw in a bunch of the wrestlers in there with him.
yeah,
I don't know who watches those,
yeah. That
but
that Ted DiBiase Jr. Marine 3 doesn't holds up anymore apparently.
I think he might have been in number two. But
Two. Sorry,
hey, facts. Come on, we got to
I
stick to
jumped
the facts.
ahead. I only watched the odd numbered ones.
Yeah. It's like like Star Trek. It's those are the only good ones. One,
Yeah,
three.
Marine 1, 3, 5, 7. Those are what you need to see. All good.
All right. Well, before we get to some of the other movies that I found in my research, let's do our pick here first. So, Eric, I'll let you start since you have probably the most interesting pick of all people on the internet to make these picks. So,
Well, yeah. So one thing we talked about briefly before we started recording too was about like, is it a quality? Like I will not. I won't like defend the film as like any semblance of a great movie, but I just mean like it's Santa's Slay, Slay, like Slay is a slasher movie, but it's a slasher comedy. I mean, it's not people. There are a lot of people that die. At least about like 8 famous people in the first 5 minutes. But stars Bill Goldberg, which the reason I chose this movie is because for me it works as a couple things. One is that you it's probably good if you are familiar with um who Bill Goldberg is, I would say. I think that because he's at points they are, and this is obviously very cheesy, but I feel like it's intentionally so. He will do certain moves that he is known for in the ring, and
right.
he kills some of his victims by doing the spear or whatever. And if you know that that's his move, like it's hilarious because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that Bill Goldberg is Jewish. That also kind of plays a part at one point, and he kills Sal Rubnik like a menorah, I believe. It's a very poor taste kind of movie that that would not be made today. I could say that, and but I do feel like if you ever want to get someone, I have shown that as I feel like we were introduced to it, like I've shown enough people the opening scene at a dinner table with like James Caan and Rebecca Gayheart and Fran Drescher and Chris Kattan, if you remember Chris Kattan, and Santa Claus, Bill Goldberg shows up and kills them all in very elaborate ways within the first 5 minutes. It's very funny because it is again very graphic and over the top. Um, for me, it's just like it's a fun movie to watch, and it plays on. Look, Bill Goldberg does not have range, but there is like the most knowingly like winking at the audience that he's ever done. He doesn't really even. He's much more lighthearted in this movie than he's ever really been on television as his wrestling persona, if you will.
Right.
Whereas it's completely intense, angry. That's like that's the Bill Goldberg character on in wrestling. Where here it's just kind of fun to see him play on that and have some fun with it as well. Not that you have to like it's just a direct to video cheapy movie. It was actually in looking this up, like it was shot by Matthew Leonetti, who is actually has done shot so many films over the years, and you know, they're Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Poltergeist, Weird Science, Star Trek: First Contact, and he's worked with like everybody. Zack Snyder, The Fairly he's like 80 now, but you know, it's just funny because he's like the one notable big credit. But yeah, the movie's ridiculous. There's animation, stop motion animation. It takes place in a town called Hell, which that does. There's a town called Hell in Ohio, but they don't say if that's the hell that they're in. But it stands out for me, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I did when I was writing. I think I did a straight to video nightmares column on Santa Sleigh, and obviously it's been a while. So it's from 2005, and it's funny when you said, you know, the movie wouldn't be able to be made today, which I agree with. And it's like only 15, 16 years ago. And yet we could say so many things wouldn't be made.
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
And it was only that long ago. But
Yeah. I mean,
I remember it being a cheesy movie, though.
It was shocking at the time as well. But like, because it is so over the top. But yeah.
I remember it being a cheesy, entertaining B movie, though.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't pretend to be anything else. So
yeah. You should be laughing throughout. I mean, it's not
right. And you know, the thing about a lot of movies try to have the wrestlers do their moves somehow. Like it's interesting how they try to throw that in there. I guess just to appeal to the wrestling fans that go to see it. But
yeah, I guess that's another part, right? Like this is like very much breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas when you would have Hogan as like this, as Thunder Lips, is he doing the leg drop? He does, right?
Yeah, he does, but it's not because that was pre Say Your Prayers. That was AW. No, I'm sorry. That was the first run. His first run with WWF, and Vince Senior didn't want him to do that movie, so he left and did it anyway. So, like, I think the move that like finishes Rocky off, I think it's just like a body slam or something. I don't think it's the leg drop, but he does do that in there. And obviously the sound effects in that movie are amplified to the nth degree. So everything that he does seems like, you know, devastating.
Yeah.
But so yeah, my movie is from 1988, and it is They Live, directed by John Carpenter, a science fiction film that was based on a 1963 short story, 8 o'clock in the morning, by Ray Nelson. And it stars Roddy Piper, Keith David, and Meg Foster. He is a nameless, well, not nameless. His name is Nada, but this article says his name. He's a drifter,
nameless as possible,
who discovers through special sunglasses that the ruling class are aliens, concealing their appearance and manipulating people to consume, breed, and conform to the status quo via subliminal messages in mass media. So I've seen this movie a couple times, and I was introduced to this movie not necessarily because it starred Roddy Piper. It was because a friend of mine told me what one of the iconic lines was. I think even at one point there was a DVD of greatest movie fights, and this one was on there. Roddy Piper and Keith David have a very iconic fight that was mimicked by South Park at one point. But that was on there. And then, you know, his classic line about, you know, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum and all out of bubblegum. And so that's why I went to see it. I was like, okay, that, you know, I'll see it for that reason. And it's a very good movie, much better than I think it's ever been given credit for. It has that cult status to a certain extent, but I don't think it's ever been given the credit that it really deserves as like a really quality movie. John Carpenter is a very good director, and he does a good job here with Piper. He uses him well, and that's kind of the key with wrestlers, especially in this era. Like, you have to know how to use them. Like, you have to play to their strength and kind of hide their weaknesses, much like you would do somebody in the ring with their talent.
Yeah, and
Um,
I feel like was that thinking over like the timeline of these films too. Like I feel like at the time that was probably the most out of his range or stepping out of the box of just being a professional wrestler in a movie. Like
yeah,
I think that Roddy Piper, a lot of people, like you said, like they have gotten to see They Live because of John Carpenter, et cetera,
right.
and may not have a connection to Piper as a wrestler. But you don't need to. Like it feels like that was independently using his talents. I
Yeah,
guess it just so
and
happens that
he had a period there where he did a bunch of movies, and I remember, as a teenager, seeing them in stores, and just kind of going past them because they either looked like obscure sci-fi things or whatever stuff that I wasn't interested in. And the poster of this movie certainly doesn't feature him prominently in any way. So
Is it the glass,
yeah,
the
the
glasses
glasses,
over there
right?
looking under?
Um,
Yeah.
and it's an iconic image in its own right. So yeah, this was my pick. It's a movie that if I had to pick, I would probably revisit this one above some of the others. And some of the others that I considered, other than The Princess Bride, I did consider Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, being that Batista was a prominent member of the ensemble,
Yeah.
and that was an excellent Marvel movie.
He might be, he's not at the Rock's level of success, but he seems to be one of the most successful, wrestlers turned actors, if you will, right? Like he
Absolutely.
also has nobody. I feel like he's totally branched out from uh his appearance. He takes roles that you wouldn't associate with someone that looks like his size and everything, right?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, I mean, he's shown his range. Now, I haven't seen all of his movies. I think he also did a movie with a little girl recently.
oh yeah,
That was
yeah.
I think family oriented. I have not seen that, but he was able to craft a good career for himself. And
He
by
shows
that,
up in the Blade Runner 2049 for a few minutes.
oh, you know what? I still haven't seen Blade Runner
Oh, no?
2049, and I'm upset about that.
Oh,
But
he's
now that
in
I
it.
know he's in it, that's all the more reason, right?
So, like, I'm like, is that Batista? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And they should, yeah.
There are a lot of movie. It was some movie that I found on a lot of lists. Was Blockers with John Cena, which was a good comedy, I guess. But the one that was number one on a lot of lists, and I don't understand. I guess I do, but it's an odd pick to me, which was The
No evil.
Godfather.
Oh, oh.
The
So
Godfather.
this
So
because of that one guy who's
Luca
been like a,
Brasi
yeah.
portrayed, Lenny Montana was the actor's name, and he did wrestle for 2 decades as the Zebra Kid through the 1950s, and so obviously, like, and a lot of these articles I found would say, best movies starring wrestlers. Obviously, he's not the star of that.
I was gonna say that wouldn't meet our criteria, right?
Right,
I
and
mean,
that's why it's kind of like it really is misleading. And so a lot of movies mention the wrestler, which stars Mickey Rourke, but it also has him facing a character named the Ayatollah, which is played by Ernest the Cat Miller. And obviously, he's not the star either. So,
that's probably we'd say the best movie about professional wrestling,
oh yeah,
right? Yeah,
absolutely. If we were going to do that, like, it would, to me, that would be an easy number one.
yeah.
With Ready to Rumble is number two, right, Eric? Yeah,
I'd say 1.5. I'd put Ready
yeah,
to Rumble.
absolutely.
Yeah,
But yeah, The Godfather was on a lot of lists, and I just kind of found that odd. Um, Magic Mike was on a lot of lists, and some weird ones. Movies that I forgot actually had wrestlers in them, like uh, Kimberly Page was in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which,
oh really?
yeah,
Huh.
I guess she was bared her breasts in that movie, which I did not associate with her. But
Huh.
Spider-Man has Randy Savage in a small
Yeah.
scene, so that was on there. But again, you don't go to see these movies because of the wrestler in it. And
Yeah.
if I was including movies like with The Rock, as odd as it may seem, I would probably put like Fast Five on there because he was still wrestling during that time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so
interesting too, like seeing how sometimes the charisma or the popularity of the character doesn't always necessarily translate into to the screen
Right.
to the film. Like I would assume someone like a Chris Jericho would be a big would have that kind of movie success.
Right.
And I don't really think if he's really done any movies.
I mean,
Um,
he's such a versatile guy. He hosted that Robot Wars show for a while there. So like he's
yeah,
done TV and stuff, but like not acting in terms of action or anything like
yeah.
that, really. Like, but you're right. He would be somebody that you would think of to venture into that world. But
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that's always gonna match up. Like, it's funny to see just how wooden like Stone Cold is in the Condemned and the few movies that
yeah,
he did. And I think they were like, it's incredible. Like you see him in wrestling, and then you see him on screen, and it just doesn't work.
no,
It doesn't
yeah,
translate.
yeah,
So
he
it
did a
doesn't.
bunch of movies, and it never worked. You know,
Yeah, he is stone cold in anything he does now. That's I feel like he's leaned into even adopting that persona even more
yeah,
than you know. Um,
and even Hogan's movies didn't really work. I mean, they were mainstream,
yeah,
certainly.
I
Mr.
think he
Danny
like
and
some
so
of them probably I feel like are really protective of their persona,
yeah,
and that may limit them sometimes when it comes to branching out, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I think for in Hogan's case, the movie that put him on the map was Rocky 3. Now he played a wrestler in it, but it was a small role, and I'm surprised he didn't take more small roles, like a John Cena, for example. John Cena is able to kind of escalate into Hollywood based on taking a role like in Trainwreck or whatever, a small role, and then eventually he would kind of continue to break out of his comfort zone. So
yeah, that is. I feel like the Judd Apatow supporting character is usually the role that goes to an athlete. Trainwreck also had a great LeBron James performance.
yeah,
Like you get like the Judd Apatow writes these real quote unquote real athletes, and then they're in the movie and they're actually really good. And what was he with the Space Jam sequel hold? But it at least shows that they can be a little bit more versatile than they're known for. So usually get Judd Apatow to write you a supporting role if you're an athlete or a wrestler, and that's usually a good start.
yeah.
I feel like.
And if I was making a prediction of a wrestler that's wrestling now that I could see venturing into Hollywood, it would probably be somebody like Roman Reigns, simply because he knows he's is related to The Rock, and has an in based on that. I can see him not wanting to wrestle until he's 60. I see him maybe wanting to hang it up while he can still do it. So I could
Yeah,
see him getting into acting. I mean, he was in the Hobbs and Shaw.
I was gonna say that's the irony. That's but that was so leaning into his character
Oh
wrestling.
yeah.
He was doing the Superman punch, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
That's
You know.
it's funny though. Sometimes you see that stuff where they do their moves and you're like, oh, and other times you see it and you're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
What's good and what's not. You don't know.
Yeah, I felt like uh Glenn Jacobs, Kane, like he could have done so much more than like he did See No Evil, and it was just a typical standard slasher movie, and it's based on him being a scary character
Right.
on WWE, and I felt like he actually could be a funny enough guy, like he could have had some of those kind of luggish comedy roles,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah,
never really.
the Big Show did Knucklehead, and
Yeah, Big Show, yeah,
Triple H tried
that's
one in the Chaperone, and they tried different people, but like you said, sometimes
yeah.
it just doesn't translate.
Yeah, Triple H the first time, the Blade Trinity with
Oh
him,
yeah,
Jessica
yeah.
Biel, and Ryan. Oh God, that was did not
Not
work.
the best installment of that trilogy.
No, apparently I also saw. I still haven't seen this film, but the Peanut Butter Falcon. People
With
mentioned Mick
Mick
Foley a
with
few
Mick
times.
Foley, yeah. I saw that on a list too, and I was like, "Oh shit, I did not even know that he was in it."
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
But yeah, so if you guys want to let us know what your favorite movie featuring or starring a wrestler is, please let us know in the comments. And please check out my other show, The Nitty Gritty with Leonard. And for Eric, my name is Chad, and we will see you next week.